What is up, you guys? Diggerdan here, coming at you with another video. Today I'm doing something a little different for the channel, and that's taking a look at r/Fantasy's 2024 book bingo card. So without further ado, let's dig into it. So I just want to preface this before I dig into anything that I stole this idea from Benjamin over at Benjamin's book club. So go check him out if you haven't already. Benjamin's a good friend of the channel. He's my first Australian friend, so that's really cool. And yeah, just overall shout out to you, Benjamin. So yeah, if you haven't heard or don't know, on Reddit there is a subreddit called r/Fantasy where they talk about all things fantasy, and they have a yearly bingo book card, or book bingo card, I guess how you could say it, where they talk, or it goes over like 25 prompts for different types of books to read. Like, so for example, the first one we'll get into is like the first in a series. So the challenge is for that bingo spot is to read the first book in a series, but there's a caveat where there's a hard mode, where it doesn't really mean anything special. It's just kind of a more self-imposed challenge, where for this case, it's like the series is more than 3 books long. So it's pretty cool. There's a couple of the self-imposed rules that they have. Is that you can't repeat books. So some of these books could work for multiple squares, but just for the rules, just so you can diversify your reading a little more and be exposed to more, the challenge is 1 book per square. And another challenge that kind of made it a little harder for myself, because I like to read a lot of the same author, or a lot of the same handful of authors, is only 1 author per square. And in the case of the short stories, you can get a little bit of crossover there. But for the most part, 1 author per book, or 1 book per author per square, or per card is what I'm trying to say. And that's really it. So I'm going to go through. It took me way longer to come up with the list that I did. So I'm going to go through my list. I still have a couple holes that I'm going to have you guys throw me in some recommendations down in the comments. And yeah, let's just go through this together. The last thing I want to mention that I forgot to is that it's like the bingo card for the year. And it starts on April 1st, or April Fools of 2024, and then it runs through March 31st of 2025. So it's still 365 days, but it's not the calendar year. It's not Jan 1 to December 31st. It's April 1st to March 31st. So I just got to throw that in there because I forgot to mention that. All right, so first prompt, or first square, is the first in a series. Read the first book in a series. The hard mode is the series is more than 3 books long. So my submission for this one, the one I plan on reading, is Malice by John Gwynne. This is the first book in a 4-book series, so this does qualify for the hard mode, In the Faithful and the Fallen. I haven't read anything from John Gwynne yet, but I know there's a lot of hype with his newest book that's coming out later this year, I believe, or maybe early 2025. I can't remember. But yeah, I've heard only good things about John Gwynne, especially with his action sequences or fight scenes. So yeah, I'm excited to dig into him. All right, prompt number 2 is alliterative title. See, I can't even say words. And this is read a book where multiple words in the title begin with the same letter. And the hard mode is the title has 3 words or more that start with the same letter. So I wanted to do Lies of Loch Lamora for that one, but I just read that in January. So that's outside of the window. So I don't get the hard mode for this one. My submission I'll do, as of right now, is the Sword of Shannara. So I got double S in there. So this doesn't do hard mode, but who cares? It doesn't matter. And yeah, I'm currently reading this. I'm about 250 pages in. It's about 750 pages. There's just some life things that have come up, so it's taken me a little bit of time to get through this. But it's not to say I'm not enjoying the book. I am enjoying it. But yeah, book number 2, Sword of Shannara. Prompt number 3, or square number 3, is under the surface. So read a book where an important setting is either underground or underwater, with the hard mode being at least half the book takes place underground or underwater. This one is a big question mark for me. I'm not positive. This one is Secret Realms by Tom Cool. This one, I read the prompt, and it sounds very interesting. It sounds very, what's the word? Ender's Game-esque, which is really cool, where just from reading the prompt, it it's basically super geniuses are in this, not alternate reality, but like virtual reality, that's the word, in where they're doing these like military sequences, and it turns out like people, like actual militaries are performing them against their enemies. And then it says, but again, this is all in the synopsis, so I'm not spoiling anything. But then those super geniuses who are in that virtual reality say they're in a secret place, and secret bunker, and I believe that means they're underground, right? Or it just said island, but in my head it means secret bunker in the ground, like underground. So I could be wrong. This one might not qualify, but so if you have a better one, let me know in the comments. I would love to know. But yeah, all right. Prompt number 4 is criminals. Read a book in which the main character is a criminal. This could be a thief, a thief, assassin, someone who commits mail fraud, etc. And then the hard mode has to feature a heist. I just got done reading Mistborn, so this does fall in the window because this was after April 1st when I finished this book. And this definitely is, they're criminals. Yeah, and they definitely do a heist. And I do have a review for this where you should go watch. So yeah, this is my first actual submission, book I actually finished for this year. And it does achieve the hard mode, so go me. Now, the fifth one, the last one of the first row, is dreams. Read a book where characters experience dreams, magical or otherwise, with the hard mode being the dream is not mystical or unusual, just a normal dream or nightmare. This one, I don't know. I have no idea. I know I've read books where dreams have happened, especially dreams that are normal or not unusual. But I don't know off the top of my head. I was trying to look through my collection of books that I either have read, want to reread, or need to read. But it's like a lot of the books, if I haven't read it, how do I know if there's a dream sequence in there, you know? So if you guys know a good one, again, throw it down in the comments and let me know. All right, and now jumping down to that second row, first box in that second row, entitled animals. So read a book that has an animal in the title. The animal in the title does not have to appear in the story. And then hard mode, the animal in the title is a fantasy or science fiction creature. So my one I'm going to try to do is Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey, but this one is technically 3 books in one. So if I don't read the entire 3, at least Dragonflight. That's the first one of the trilogy. So Dragonflight. So it does get hard mode for this one. So that's exciting. Yeah, I'm excited to get into Anne McCaffrey in general. I've read one book of hers. I think it was like the Chronicles of Pern, where it's like a couple of short stories. And I enjoyed that, but I almost wish I wouldn't have read that because I've read that Anne McCaffrey herself recommends reading in publication order. So I maybe spoiled some stuff for myself, but it's okay. I still enjoyed what I read, but it just makes me honestly more excited to dig into Anne McCaffrey's world of Pern. So, all right, number 7 overall is Bards. Read a book in which the primary protagonist is a bard, musician, poet, or storyteller. Hard mode, the character is explicitly called a bard. Now I read Name of the Wind, which is going to be my submission for this one, a few years ago, and this is the one that kind of made me fall in love with reading as an adult. My brother recommended I read this. This is actually his copy, and you kind of note that his bookmark is still in there from a few years ago when he first lent this to me. Again, Andrew, if you're watching this, you can have your book back. If you don't want it, that's okay. I'm more than happy to keep it. But yeah, say what you will about Rothfuss, about his blunders with not releasing the promised chapter and not having written the book after a decade or more, however long it's been. This book literally changed my life, or at least my mindset when reading fantasy. And I haven't read it in a few years, probably going on 3-4 years now. Yeah, and so I'm definitely excited to have an excuse to dig back into this one. And who knows, maybe I'll have to read the second one to follow up, even if even if there's no light at the end of the tunnel to see when that third one gets released. But in this one, I don't know if he's technically called a bard either, so I don't know if this one qualifies as hard mode. Again, let me know in comments. But I would argue he is a bard. All right, so for the third one on row 2, Prologues and Epilogues, my submission for this one is The Lions of Al-Razan, however you want to say that. Sorry, you got Gallery okay. But this one, read a book that has either a prologue or an epilogue. Hard mode is the book has to have both. And this one does. So enough said. I'm excited about this one because it is a standalone. So it's not like my other Guy Gabriel K book where it's the last one in a trilogy, so I have to get the other 2 before I can read it. This one just a one and done. And I've heard Guy Gabriel K is a master storyteller. And I've even heard people like Brandon Sanderson and Dan Wells on their podcast like rave about Guy Gabriel K. And I haven't actually read him yet, so I'm excited to dig into this one. All right, next one is self-published or indie publisher, which with the submission is being self-published or published through an indie publisher. If a former self-pub novel has been picked up by a publisher, it only counts for this challenge if you read it while it was still self-pubbed. Hard mode is self-published and has fewer than 100 ratings on Goodreads. So mine for this one, I surprised myself, is Talisman by Eric Selmberg. This one I picked up at a library book resale thing where any money that they raised basically is donated to the library. And I had no idea what this was, but it was in the very tiny box that was fantasy and sci-fi. And it was bag day, so I scooped it up, and I think I only feel like I got a few books, so it was less than $1. And then looking at the submission, and I saw less than 100 reviews on Goodreads. This one has 3 or 4, depending on what version you look at. So that is the lowest amount of ratings I've seen on any book. So I'll have to read this one and give my own rating and let you guys know. But yeah, this one I was definitely surprised because when I first read that prompt, I'm like, I don't even know who's self-pubbed anymore. Because pretty much everything I have is traditionally pubbed unless it's something random like this. Yeah, and then the 100 ratings or less, that's bonkers. Good luck to everybody out there. Again, I feel really lucky the fact that I have this one. Square number 10, or the last square on row 2, is Romantasy. Read a book where this features romance as a main plot. This must be speculative in nature and does not have to be fantasy. Hard mode, the main character is LGBTQIA+. Now this one doesn't fall with the hard mode, I don't believe, because I'm pretty sure she's just straight. But The Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I did read this one last year, and I read it before I started doing reviews, and I wanted to do a review on it recently, but I feel like it's been too long since I've read it. So this honestly gives me a good excuse to read it again and do a proper review on it this time. Another reason I wanted to read it is because I wanted to get my wife more into reading, or read something with me and kind of read more fantasy, where she doesn't read too much, but when she does, she tends to read just straight romance. So I figured this might be a good bridge the gap, but I figured I might as well read it first, just to show her that I'm committed to it. And then I read it, and I didn't really care for it. It was kind of so-so, and I think that kind of scared her away from it. She tried to read it, but it was just too much fantasy for her, I guess. So maybe she'll never be into fantasy, but that's okay. We can all be in our own things. So yeah, it was so-so, like I said, but I'm excited to read it again, with having read more things and see if I like it more or less. All right, going down to row 3, Dark Academia. Read a book that fits the dark academia aesthetic. This includes school and university, secret societies, and dark mysteries. They don't have to be fantasy, but must be speculative. Hard mode, the school itself must be entirely mundane. Now, this would have been a great submission for Babel. I just had to look at it. I couldn't remember what it was called. But unfortunately, I read that in February, so I think it was February. I have a video on that one, so go check that out if you want. Yeah, so that'd be perfect for that one. But I just recently read it. I don't think I want to read it again in the next year. So that one, unfortunately, doesn't work. But this one, I won't get hard mode for it, but the Earthsea trilogy, or if I just read the first one even just to get it started. I forget what it's called. The Wizard of Earthsea. I believe it follows, I believe the main character goes to like wizard school. So that'd be Dark Academia, right? Right? If you think this is good submission, let me know. If not, if you have a better submission that isn't this or Babel. Again, this is like made for Babel. But I don't think I want to read it again in that time frame. Let me know in the comments. All right, next is multi-POV. Read a book with at least 3 point of view characters. Hard mode, at least 5 point of view characters. So I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments again. I'm asking a lot of you guys this video. But I believe Abercrombie writes a lot from different characters' POVs. Again, I haven't read any of him yet, so I'm not positive, just from what I've heard. But yeah, The Blade itself, or the first book in the First Law trilogy. I'm excited to get in this regardless, but I figured this would just be another excuse to pick up The Blade itself, or at least start with The Blade itself. Yeah, let me know again in the comments. I think it's at least 3. If it'd be 5, that'd be epic. I believe it follows a band of characters. I think. I don't know. Like I've said in previous videos, I like to know as little about a book as possible before I go into it. So some of you people are like, how do you not know? You bought the book. Like, fair. But again, I like to know as little about the book as possible before I read it. That way I don't have like preconceived notions, and then get like super disappointed. Like I sort of kind of did with Mistborn. Mistborn, again, don't get me wrong, is a really good book. But just people are like putting it way up here, like 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10. And for me, it just wasn't that high, but it's still a good book. So that's why I try to avoid reading as much, like reading the synopsis and things like that as possible. So the next one is published in 2024, a book published for the first time in 2024, no reprints or new editions. With hard mode being, it's also the author's first published novel. Now this one I have no idea, because I have been playing a lot of catch up, because there's been a lot of number of years in like high school and college where I just didn't read, at least read for fun. And so just recently in my adult life, my last couple of years, again, part of the reason I started this channel is to kind of document what I've been reading. But yeah, again, I'm playing a lot of catch up. So you can see I have shelves and shelves of old stuff. So I think the most recent book I have is actually Murtagh, which was I think it was November of 23. So that one doesn't qualify. But again, I grew up reading Aragon. I loved Aragon. So that one I literally had my wife pre-order that for me for my birthday, and get the signed edition and all that. So I guess that's my newest book. But aside from that, everything is kind of older, or old-ish, I'll say. So yeah, let me know I guess maybe what's one of the books you're most looking forward to for 2024. What's like your favorite new book that came out this year, and maybe I'll try to give that a shot. All right, next, Square is character with a disability. So read a book in which an important character has a physical or mental disability, with hard mode being a main character has a physical or mental disability. This one, again, is another big question mark for me. I have no idea. Because I feel like a lot of things, if I had read the book, then I would know whether it has the character has a mental disability or not. And I don't know. And I know it's not like a common thing in books. Again, that's probably why they're highlighting it in the bingo card, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I have no idea. So if you know, please chuck it in the comments down below, and I'd be more than happy to check it out. All right, so last Square for this row is published in the 1990s. So read a book that was published in the 1990s, with the hard mode being that the author or one of the authors, if it's a book from multiple authors, has also published something in the last 5 years. My submission for this one is Homeland by R.A. Salvatore. This is the first book in the Legend of Drizzt series. I forget how many books are in this. I've heard really good things about it, and I'm really excited to dig into this one. And this one does get hard mode because Salvatore is like a madman. People are always like praising Sanderson about how much he writes, and the man writes a lot, and it's good quality stuff. but I almost argue Salvatore writes quicker than him. So, because you look at his stuff, like I went on his Goodreads and it has like over 200, 300 like distinctive works. Now I'm sure a lot of that is kind of comic stuff and short stories, but still, that's a lot of stuff. I think even he has a book that I think just came out at the beginning of this year even. So again, regardless, this does qualify for the hard mode. All right, so moving down to row 4. This is Orcs, Trolls, and Goblins. Oh my. Read a book featuring Orcs, Trolls, or Goblins. Hard mode, one of those 3 species being a main character. So I know Legends and Lattes is a book where the main character, I believe, is like a half-orc or an orc barbarian, like that retires and opens up a coffee shop, I think. So I thought about that one, but I don't own that book, so maybe I could borrow it from the library or something. But I was looking through things that I do own, so that one would get me the hard mode. But something that I do own that I know has goblins in it is The Hobbit. I haven't read this in years. I remember reading it as like a middle schooler and thinking it was okay. I thought the movies were like way cooler. So I think I was maybe comparing it to that. And I haven't read this since. So this, I know it's an easy read. This is less than 300 pages, so I can probably rip through it pretty quickly. And people love The Hobbit, so I figured this would be a good one for this guy. All right, now moving down the line, next is Space Opera. Read a sci-fi book that features a large cast of characters and has a focus on social dynamics, which may be political or personal in nature, set primarily in space or on spaceships. That is very long-winded, and I'm not even done. Hard mode, written by an author of marginalized gender identity. So I don't get hard mode, but I believe this qualifies. Star Wars The Last Command. This is the last book in the Thrawn trilogy from Legends, the real canon to fans. So yeah, it's Star Wars, right? So I read the first 2, enjoyed the first 2, and then I plan on reading this in the month of April. By the time this video came out, I maybe even started it. I'm not sure. But yeah, spaceships, space opera, Star Wars. All right, moving down again, author of color. Read a book by an author of color. Hard mode must be a debut novel published in the last 5 years. So I don't believe I get hard mode because this was... No, I definitely don't get hard mode because this was published originally in 2012. But this is okay for just normal mode because N.K. Jemisin is a black woman. There we go. Yeah, so that's her. So that 100% qualifies. And I'm excited for this one too because I've heard a lot. I've heard mostly good things about 5th season. More recently, I've heard more mixed things where it's it's type of book where you love it or hate it. And based off the things I've heard about it, I think I'm probably more apt to like it. But again, I don't know until I try it. So I think this is a great time to try to jump into it. All right, next one is survival. Read a book in which the primary goal of the characters and the story's focus is on survival. Surviving an apocalypse, surviving a war, surviving high school, etc. Hard mode, no super viruses or pandemics. This one, I believe, qualifies for hard mode. And that is Andy Weir's Project Hail Mary. It's just a guy that is like alone in space, I think. Again, I barely even finished the synopsis. I like to know as little as possible. So if this doesn't qualify, let me know, but I'm pretty sure it does. And if there's one that you think might qualify better, or if this doesn't qualify, maybe give me a new one to try. But I'll probably read this one regardless because I've heard only good things about it, and it's a one-off. So, but yeah, Survival, Project Hail Mary. This next one is probably one of the submission or one of the prompts that I think is kind of the most clever. Judge a book by its cover. Choose a book because you like its cover. Hard mode, pick the book based only on the information available on the cover. No reading the blurb. That's an easy hard mode for me because, like I said, I hardly read the blurb unless I'm like kind of on the fence. Just because there's so much I got to catch up on. I a lot of times don't even need to read the blurb. It's just when I watch probably too much BookTube as well, with a lot of people recommending stuff. and just like knowing, like watching people's like top 10 lists, or in case of like Shelf Centered, watching Bryce's top 100 videos, and him talking about. Regardless, I watch a lot of stuff where I don't need to read the blurb, I guess. This one's a little different, where I didn't know this book existed until I saw the cover and decided to pick it up. I believe this was another one of those where it was like a library book sale. It was like maybe a bag day or something. But this one is The Fall of Atlantis by Marion Zimmer Bradley. That just looks cool. Like, it's like The Fall of Atlantis. I don't know. It just looks so cool. So, yeah, that's going to be one for that. And I believe the spine, you got to read the spine, right, too? That counts as the cover. That's like the cover of the side. Like, it doesn't have first book or anything, so, like, of a trilogy. So I'm pretty sure it's a standalone. So I feel pretty confident just jumping into that one. All right, going on to the last row. The first one in the last row, or book 21 overall, is set in a small town. The primary setting is a small town. Hard mode. The small town can be real or fictional, but the broader setting must be in our real world and not a secondary world. This one, it's up for debate. Redwall. It's animals in a little abbey. Now you could argue that that's not a town, but I would argue that it's a small community of little forest woodland creatures that's in a small town setting. So this one definitely doesn't get hard mode, but like I said, it's kind of iffy if this even qualifies for the normal mode. But I just want another excuse to read Redwall, because like I've said before, this entire shelf, except for those two hardcovers that are sitting on, is Redwall, and I've only read the first 3, and I plan on getting the entire series at some point. I have most of them. And yeah, so, and I want to do reviews on these as well, and I haven't. This was a couple of the books I started reading before I started reading the Rothfuss book, The Name of the Wind. Because like I said, Name of the Wind is really what brought me into like adult fantasy and really made me fall in love with reading again. But before that, I was like feeling nostalgic and wanted to read some Redwall, because I do remember reading some Redwall as a kid. And so that's why I read the first 3 when I did. And it's been a couple years, again. So I'm happy to reread it, and I'm happy to have an excuse. And let me know in the comments, does it count as small town? It's probably not, but I would say yes. All right, next one, 5 short stories. So read any 5 short stories or novellettes. Interesting. Hard mode, read an entire speculative anthology or collection. So mine, it's big one. If you watched last week's Thursday video, the book haul for March, you recognize this book. This is the year's best fantasy from 1987. So it's a series of short stories by a ton of authors that were writing at that point. I don't know if they published anything that year or what. But you'll notice some names like, well, at least I know, like Stephen Brust, but Ursula K. Le Guin, George R. Martin, Jane Yolen, people like that. So from my understanding, I just have to read 5 out of here for just normal mode, or I could read the entire. How many pages is this? Almost 600 pages to get the hard mode. So we'll see. But yeah, I'll probably, at some point, I'll probably read 5 short stories out of this. All right, Eldritch Creatures. I'll read a book featuring a being that is uncanny, unearthly, and weird. This can be a god or monster from another plane or realm, and is usually beyond mortal understanding. Sounds very Lovecraftian. Hard mode. This book is not related to the Cthulhu mythos. Well, there you go. I don't have a submission for this one. I don't know. Eldritch stuff usually isn't my cup of tea. That's not to say I don't like it. It's just that's not my go-to, so I'm not familiar with a lot of this stuff. So again, I'm asking for more help from you guys in the comments. If you guys have any submissions or recommendations, let me know. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't read enough of it. Next is reference materials. Read a book that references additional material, such as a map. Read a book that features additional material, such as a map, footnotes, glossary, translation guide, etc., etc. Hard mode book contains at least 2 types of additional materials. Now this one I think is cool, which is The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman. This one, of course, it's fantasy, so it has to have a map, right? So it's got nice, cool, standard, beautiful map. It's like grayscale, interesting. But then on the next page, it's got a whole calendar thing, which I think is very unique, because most like speculative or just like fiction, even sci-fi in general, they just use like our normal Gregorian calendar that we use today, IRL. So this one's kind of cool, where months are 36 days and weeks are 9 days, and then there's only 10 months. So I didn't do the math. I don't know if that's the same amount of days, but I just thought that was interesting. No, it doesn't have a glossary for fun words or anything like that, but this does qualify as hard mode in my opinion because it has the map and the calendar. So, all right, and finally, book club or read-along book. Any past or active art/fantasy book clubs count, as well as past or active fantasy read-alongs. See our full list here. I did not do that. Hard mode must be a current selection or either a book club or read-along. Participate in discussion. Maybe I'll do hard mode, but I feel like with how long they've been doing the book clubs and read-alongs, there's bound to be one that I plan on reading anyway. So I'll probably have to take a look at that. Yeah, that is the entire list, my friends. Do you like my submissions? Are some of those kind of scratching your head? Like, does that really count? Are others like, that's a slam dunk? Let me know. Did you guys do your own r/fantasy bingo card? Have you already like read some books towards it? Let me know in the comments below. I appreciate you guys so much for watching up to this point. This is kind of a longer video for myself, and you guys are amazing, and I like you. And again, shout out to Benjamin from Benjamin's Book Club. If you haven't subscribed to him, please go do. He's just great. Yeah, that's it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like down below. Want to see more from me, Diggerdan, please hit that subscribe button as well as that bell notification icon so you guys know when I upload, each and every single time. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.